in studio today. And speaking of college hoops, now Tiki wasn't in the room when Frank said that. Frank Zaccanelli, who we had on the show, I guess it was about a week and a half or so ago, when Dirk Nowitzki had 30,000 points. And you gave the great story about how Don Nelson scouting and trying to keep it quiet, and the trade and everything was amazing. And we enjoyed the conversation so much that Frank was in New York doing business, and we said, come on in. So he's here today. And Teak, when you were out, I said, where are you from? And he goes, Syracuse. And he said, I was good enough to play at Syracuse. I just decided not to. So he played at Potsdam. So right away, who bypasses Syracuse to play at Potsdam?
You got a little LeVar Ball in you.
No, let me tell you, though. At the big schools, it's the bigs. They got better big guys. But the guard play at Division II and III basketball is really good. And we were good. And we had a great coach, and he had a great program. We came down to New York every year and played in the Christmas tournament down here. So we had
Which team?
we played against John Jay.
Oh, John Jay, Crumble Johnston.
Yeah, they actually had a really good basketball program back in the 70s.
Interesting. Maybe NYU, some of those schools, right?
and we played every year. So he was big on that. So it was always fun coming down.
But Boeheim wasn't there yet in 74.
Well, he was assistant coach.
Gotcha.
Yeah, Roy Danforth was the head coach there. And they played in Manley Fieldhouse. And so it was this really cool 10,000-seat place where everybody made a lot of noise, and it was fun. And then, of course, they built the Carrier Dome.
Carrier Dome.
Now, that was where your love of basketball developed. And did your dream of owning a team start then?
I don't think so. These things happen to you, and sometimes you have no idea how they happen.
What do you mean? Like,
how come that doesn't happen to me?
Owning an NBA team just happens? What are you talking about?
No, but they happen to you. It's like right place, right time. The planets align up, and then what happens is that you wake up one day, and it's kind of this surreal deal. You guys have been there in your careers. It's kind of this surreal thing that you sit back and say, how did this happen? But, you find yourself sitting courtside, basically making decisions about what's going on. But it's like any other business.
Yeah.
The NBA is a business. So,
what was beside Dirk, and we want to hit a few different things with you, but besides Dirk and that evaluation, what was the other toughest basketball decision that you had to make? Or maybe ones that your partners really disagreed with and there was friction that you just, something that really jumps out?
Well, the most controversial thing that people would tell you that I ever did was trade Jason Kidd, in his second or third year in the league.
Now, was that because of Tony Braxton? Let's get to the bottom of this. I've heard rumblings about Jimmy Jackson, Jamal Mashburn, Jason Kidd. Tony Braxton was pretty good.
Only 2 out of 3 of those guys were dating.
Who was the one who was not? I'm going to give you a guess.
All right, you take a guess.
It was not Jamal Mashburn.
You got it.
Thank you.
You got it.
BT,
you got it.
You are too knowledgeable, BT. But
I love it.
It's funny because when we think about the decisions that owners, GMs, etc., all you guys have to make, we want to put it all in basketball or on the field or on the court. That's all we want to talk about. Oh, on the court he's this, or on the field he's that. Those other things come into play as well?
Well, they do. And if you're doing anything, like if the 3 of us went out and we found a company that wasn't working properly, right? And we went in and bought it. The first thing we would do is we would look at the management team. We would look at the employees, right?
Your money.
Otherwise, we're not buying anything.
Look at the employees. Look at the management team. Guess what? If you're not doing very well in business, what happens is a bad culture is created. So if you want to change the culture, the only way you can change the culture is you got to change some of the people. Not all the people, but if you want to change the culture, like you've been in pro sports your whole life. Locker rooms. When they're good, they're good. When they're not good, they're not good.
Yeah, we were just talking about the Bulls earlier today.
Yep.
And that's kind of what that locker room is becoming in. And they're not good on the court because they're not good in the locker room.
Well, and it's a culture that starts to develop. And over time, you become your environment. I believe that in life. I believe that in business. I believe that in sports. You become your environment. So it is the owner's job to create the right environment. And so sometimes you have to change out the management team. You have to change out the people.
You know what I think would be tough? Because I do this probably more than Tiki because I didn't play in the NFL and just my roots as a broadcaster. Frank Zaccanelli, by the way, former GM co-owner of the Mavericks, with us here in studio. And I'll latch onto a player. Maybe for now it's Porzingis, who I really truly believe is going to be a star. But I
got hurt last night.
Yeah, I know he did.
Thigh bruise, though.
I think he's all right.
He's all right.
Yeah.
But I also thought that Gallinari, a couple of years before that, had a chance to get that same little bit of a different player. But the point is this: I'll make a statement, and I truly believe it. But then, because you want to be right, inherently everybody wants to be right.
Right.
You maybe latch onto it, and you tighten the grip maybe longer than you should. That's with an opinion. But I'm not running a team. I'm running a show. As a GM or a co-owner, do you battle the same thing where you fight for a player or you fight for a coach, and even though maybe in the deepest recesses of your mind you know it's not the right fit, but you keep them around longer to try to justify what you thought a couple of years ago? Is that a challenge?
You do it every day. But you also have to create value for the parts, right? So I know a lot of situations where coaches and GMs play a guy more when they're trying to actually trade him, right? Because you're trying to create value.
Sure.
So ultimately, it's a game, it's a shell game in a lot of ways. And so I think you do that pretty much every day in the NBA or in any sports business. I think that happens all the time.
How many? What
Could be dangerous, though.
It can be. But you're on a fine line between doing the right thing and then making a mistake. It's really a fine line, and so that's where you drive from.
So we make it easier. We make it sound easier. Fans make it sound easier. We do sometimes make it sound easier than it actually is.
I could be a GM. I honestly believe that in the NBA.
Well, you know what's funny is that
I believe
you
that.
got 20,000 GMs that show up at your game,
of course,
every night.
Every night.
And then I used to host the Maverick Hour on radio, and they call up and they're GMs and they, are going to give you their opinion. And that's what makes the game so great. That's what makes sports so great.
It is.
It's really tied into the fiber. I was in line checking out of a grocery store, and this 65-year-old woman came up to me, and I thought there's no way she even knows who the hell I am. And she started telling me about why we're a bad foul shooting team. And at that moment, I realized that people really pay attention.
What was her theory? I'm curious.
Yeah,
was there a real reason?
That, they're not practicing enough, and it was, technically.
Generic stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, give her points.
It made sense to her. Look, we see some of these really good owners in basketball. I think Dan Gilbert has become one because he got LeBron back. Lacob is one, obviously. He won Owner of the Year last year, I believe
and Gruber,
it was.
Yeah, those guys in Golden State.
In Golden State. But how many of these owners don't care about winning? Right? You talk about it being a business, right? You talk about the NBA. It's ultimately it's about the bottom line. You want to be as black as you can on the bottom line. How many of them are like, yeah, okay, if we win, we win. If we don't, I'm more worried about bringing in the do-re-mi.
I haven't met many if they're out there. People are very competitive. When you get into this thing, you can't run from it because every day there's an article that's written, right? And
especially now.
Whether an article needs to be written or not, it's getting written. And I had a guy my first year. We were 8-12, and I said, we're getting better.
What year was 89? What year was
this is 1996.
Your first year was 96? I thought
96.
I had that. Okay, I had that.
Yeah,
Go ahead,
1996.
Gotcha.
So I said, we're getting better. And the guy looked at me. I'm not going to mention his name. He's a pretty prominent Dallas-Fort Worth guy. He says, Frank, in the business that you're in now, you are what your record is. You are what your record is. And from playing football that, you could feel like the team is coming together.
It didn't
but
matter.
If the Giants are 7-8 going into game 16, you are what your record is.
I got to respectfully challenge this. By the way, Frank Zaccanelli is with us in studio. Okay, so I'm going to take the Browns. Now, maybe that's the ultra end of the spectrum example.
Yeah, it's a bad example because they actually are what their record is.
but here's the thing. If they go 6-10 this year, or the 49ers with new coaches, a new GM, new GM, new quarterback, and they go 7-9, I mean, that's tangible progress that I think the average fan who's on board with an intelligent rebuild, you might not have a parade for that, but you'll certainly get credit if they're a smart fan for making it. So to say you are what your record is, I think it depends on the circumstances where you're coming from.
Well, the Browns have been rebuilding for how many years
But
now?
the Niners haven't been.
Okay, so take the Niners for an example.
Yep.
What was their record last year?
2 wins.
Yeah. All right, so they had 2 wins. So if they win 6 or 7 games this year, you're saying that's a moral victory. They're on the right path. They're moving down the road.
I think the foundation's been laid. Yeah, if I'm a Niner fan, I'd be somewhat enthused with that.
But I'm saying from an ownership standpoint, you're still 6-10. And so ultimately, you still deal with the fact that, you're a sub-500 team. You're not in the playoffs. That's what you live with all the time. So to say you are what your record is, it's just that in business, like you and I could have a great conversation on something. We could make a really solid move on something, and no one knows about it. In the NBA, in sports, in football, everything that you do is printed every day.
Yeah.
Your statistics are printed every day. Your records printed every day. In general business, you can go years and camouflage something and then work yourself out of it.
I got you.
So that's I
I
think.
feel you. Still.
Yeah.
I look at it a little bit differently, but I hear you. It makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, when you left the Dallas Mavericks, you had an offer obviously from Cuban, and you moved on. Do you ever want to be back in it? You ever want to be back
Not really.
in that role?
No.
Why not?
It was fun for 4 years that we did it.
Yeah, but it seems short.
I know. How would you want to get out of
You know
that?
what I want to do? You know what I want to do?
Why
You ready
not?
for
I
this?
wonder
You know what
why.
I want to do? I want to own a Kentucky Derby horse.
Ooh, well, you got enough money to buy something.
Well,
Go ahead.
I don't know about that. That's
you
a
do.
real rich man's deal.
Oh, please.
But, I want to own a Derby horse. How about that? That's
Why?
kind of, I don't know.
What
I
would you
think it
name
would
it?
be cool.
What would you name it?
Probably after my son Angelo.
Nice.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to maybe spice it up
And plus,
a little bit
he's got
more
a
than just
he's got
Angelo,
a horseshoe,
maybe.
you know where. So he's a lucky kid.
Yeah, he's got a horseshoe.
Yeah, he's got a horseshoe, a good luck horseshoe
A
around
tattoo?
his neck.
Oh, I got you.
No. It's
I got you.
term.
I got you.
Yeah, a term.
That's an old school term.
Yeah,
That would
well,
hold my
I
head a little bit.
couldn't use where.
I got you.
Yeah.
I got you.
But
Basically, he
ultimately,
steps in belief
he's a
every day.
lucky kid, so I'd name it Angelo.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with being part of that club.
Hey,
The lucky
listen.
you know what club.
Yeah,
It's all good.
But
Sign me up, man.
you know what, Tiki? I think when you do it, it was fun. I had a blast, but ultimately, I think you just decide that you move.
So a lot of owners are that way, or are they in it for the long haul?
No,
You know?
I think that the owner of Dallas now, it's become his identity, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Mark Cuban, again.
Now, is that a good thing or a bad thing?
I think it's whatever you want it to be. I think it's whatever you want it to be. I think that ultimately, Ross Perot Jr., he didn't really care about that. He cared about running a good business. He cared about the employees. He cared about making sure that the players were taken care of. We ran it as if we bought Bank of America, right? You know, you want to do things a certain way. I think in Cuban's scenario, if you want to just use him as an example, this has given him incredible identity. And he's done
Very true.
a good job at building that identity through his ownership of the team. And so I think everybody looks at it a little bit differently. Can you name to me the guys that own San Antonio?
No.
No.
I don't know
Okay.
if I've
What's
ever
my
heard their
point?
name.
The beauty of
Good
that
point.
is that they do not view the world that way. They have put a system together, and I would suggest to you that San Antonio, tied with the New England Patriots, hopefully I'm not offending anyone, are the two best organizations in sports.
It's tough to dispute that.
Yeah.
Tough to
Because
dispute
it's
that.
shown up obviously on the court, but also seemingly in the finances off of it.
I think the San Francisco Giants should be thrown into that conversation
Okay.
on some level. Their business model in terms of the stadium, the attendance that bears itself out, the
Right.
product on the field, obviously there's great synergy there. You mentioned Cuban. I want to throw this by as well because you and I were talking before, again, when Tiki was out of the room. I guess Mark went as far as he's gone thus far this morning, if I'm not mistaken, right? In terms of positioning himself to run for president here. And we all know which way Texas leans, and we all know that he's been very
Right.
outspoken. He's got a great identity now, although I know it's rubbed some people the wrong way, the fans. If he does run for president, that's going to be one incredibly tricky dynamic that could be pretty heated.
What would the league do?
Well,
He has to divest
it's
himself, right?
unprecedented. Now, I was told earlier, and I missed this, and George W. is a good friend of mine from Dallas. He became president after owning the Rangers and after selling the Rangers.
Yes.
And then he became governor of Texas, and then he ran for president. This would be a sitting owner that ultimately now would make a run for the presidency. I think that's unprecedented. I can't think of another scenario in sports. If there is one, somebody tell me what it is. But at the Axios conference this morning, I think he went as far as he's gone that I will let everyone know I'm thinking about it. And he seems to be positioning himself to do it. The rub that I have is do it. It's your right as an American to do it. But he gets into a name-calling situation with Donald Trump, and I just don't think that that's the right way to go.